to Books of Skyrim, and today we're going to read 3 books all about thieves, beginning with the Confessions of a Thief. I am a thief. Now don't get me wrong, I ain't saying this out of pride, but I ain't ashamed of my occupation neither. Thieves got a perfect right to exist in the Empire. People say we're dishonest. Of course, those people are usually either merchants or priests, which really slays me. So does the snake calling the worm legless. Rulers like us, crime in moderation. Oh, rulers like us. Crime in moderation is good for the economy. The trick is to keep it at a good even pace, with a well-timed lull and a minor wave to keep the fat bottoms from becoming complacent. Of course, stupid but talented thieves will keep stealing, emptying their pockets, and steal some more. This ain't good for no one. That's where the guilds come in. A thieves' guild is what they call a crime regulator. We protect each other and punish the clumsy and greedy. The kings depend on us to keep the amateurs out of business. Yeah, occasionally a king will come down on us. I've even seen the thieves' guildmaster get himself stuck in prison once or twice. Some cohort of mine said her first guildmaster got himself hanged. Then the thieves' guild has to get foul on the king and let someone who knows tell you the results aren't pretty. I've got into the guild the way I've seen most thieves do it. It was a few years back when that bully Jagar Thorn was sitting on the throne, only everyone thought he was the emperor. My parents' farm turned into 8 acres of dust and rock, and they threw me and my brothers out. I was always a skinny thing, but the time I made it to the closest town, I was a good deal skinnier. Just 'cause the town had some dirt that plants could grow on didn't make them that much richer than my folks were. I tried to get all kinds of jobs, but the hungrier and more raggedier I got, the quicker anyone who might have worked would have kicked me out. When the rainy season finally came, it came like a sea, and I didn't have nowhere to stay. Lucky I found the unlocked cellar door. Turns out that the owners of the house slept like old dogs 'cause I robbed them blind and tripped into things like I was the blind one, and they never woke up. I sold all the stuff at a dirty pawners I knew, and I spent the next 2 days living like a pontinet. Then I got my first visit from the local thieves guild. I remember what the guy looked like, but not exactly what he said. Something like, "Hey kid, if you want to steal in these parts, you're going to have to join the guild. Otherwise, I, or someone like me, is going to break your skinny arm so you can't steal." I know some people who refused membership in the guild and kept stealing anyways. I've broken someone of their arms. As for me, this was the first offer I had for a career since my pa told me that if I didn't milk the cows, he'd rip my head off. In comparison, this guy at the tavern was almost a gentleman. I agreed right away. Sure, I had to prove my worth to the guild before I could join, and even now, but having two working arms is only part of the benefit. They trained me, taught me, and kept me out of prison. How many other guilds can boast a forgery expert on the premises? So the next time you're calling someone swindling merchant or unserious priest a thief, think about it. There's honor among thieves. We should know. Okay. That's an interesting book. Doesn't really tell us much though. So let's see what the Thief of Virtue will tell us. The Thief of Virtue. Let me tell you the tale of the thief of virtue. In the land of Hammerfell, in the city of Such, there lived a baron who was quite wealthy. He was a noted collector of rare coins. The Baroness Veronica found the whole thing quite tedious. However, she did appreciate the lifestyle that the baron's wealth provided. Ravius Tyrannus was a noted thief. He claimed to be a master thief in the mythical guild of thieves. However, that was most likely just bragadocio. Bragadocio. Oh, that's a new one. The only known Thieves Guild was wiped out over 450 years ago. Okay. Ravius decided that the Baron should share his wealth. Specifically, he should share it with Ravius. The wily thief crept into the Baron's castle one night, intending to do just that. The walls of the castle were noted for their height and unscalability. Ravius cleverly used an arrow of penetration to affix a rope to the top of the battlements. Once on the battlements, he had to evade the Baron's guards by hiding in the shadows of the crenellations. He was able to work his way to the keep undetected. Entering the keep was child's play for a thief of his caliber. However, a cunning lock with no less than 13 pins protected the private quarters of the Baron. Ravius broke only 9 lockpicks to open it. That's not too bad. I break a lot more. Using only a fork, a bit of string, and a wineskin, he disabled the 7 traps guarding the Baron's coin collection. Truly, Ravius was a master among thieves. With the coins safely in his grasp, Ravius began his escape only to find the way blocked. The Baron had found the open door and was raising the guard to scour the castle. Ravius fled deeper into the castle, one step ahead of the questing guards. His only way out led through the boudoir of Baroness Veronica. He entered to find the lady preparing for bed. Now, it should be said at this point that Ravius was noted for his handsome looks, while the Baroness was noted for her plainness. Both of these facts were immediately recognized by each of the pair. "Dost thou come to plunder my virtue?" asked the lady, all a-tremble. "Nay, fair lady," Ravius said, thinking quickly. "Plunder be a harsh term to apply upon such a delicate flower as your virtue. I see thou hast made off with mine husband's precious coins." Ravius looked deeply into her eyes and saw the only path by which he would escape this night with his life. It would require a double sacrifice. These coins are of rarest value. I have now found a treasure that is beyond all value, Ravius said smoothly. "Tell me, O beauteous one, why does thy husband set 7 deadly traps around these tawdry coins, but only a simple lock upon the door of his virtuous wife?" "Ignacy protects these things that are dearest to him," Veronica replied with ire. "I would give all the gold in my possession to spend but a moment basking in your radiance." With that, Ravius set down the coins he had worked so hard to steal. The Baroness swooned into his arms. When the captain of guard asked to search her quarters, she hid Ravius most skillfully. She turned over the coins, claiming the thief dropped them while he fled out the window. With that sacrifice made, Ravius steeled himself for the second. He robbed the lady Veronica of her virtue that night. He robbed her of it several times, lasting well into the wee hours of the morning. Exhausted yet sated, he stole away in the pre-dawn hours. Without the coins. Ugh. You're letting pleasure get in the way of business. Naughty, naughty thief. Okay, we got one more, which is called Three Thieves. Three Thieves by Anonymous. The problem with thieves these days, said Lidos, is the lack of technique. I know there's no honor among thieves, and there never was, but there used to be some pride, some skill, some basic creativity. It really makes those of us with a sense of history despair. Emmeline sneered, slamming down his flagon of grief violently. Grief? That's a drink? Slamming down his flagon of grief violently on the rough-hewn table. But Vic, what do you want us to say? You asked us, what do you do when you see a guard? And I says, stab the fetcher in the back. What do you prefer? We challenge him to a game of chits? So much ambition, so little education, said Lidos with a sigh. My dear friends, we aren't mugging some Nord tourist fresh off the ferry. The Cobbler's Guild Hall may not sound intimidating, but tonight when the dues collection is housed there before being sent to the bank, the security's going to be tighter than a Kwama's ass. You can't just stab at every back you encounter and expect to make it into the vaults. Why don't you explain specifically what you'd like us to do? Asked Galcia calmly, trying to keep the tone of the group down. Most locals at the Plot and Plaster Corner Club in Tel Aruban knew enough not to listen in, but she knew better than take any chances. The common thief, said Lidos, pouring himself more grief, warming to his subject, sticks his dagger in his opponent's back. This may slay the target, but more often gives him time to scream and drenches the attacker with blood. Not good. Now a good throat slashing, properly executed, can both slay and silence a guard and leave the thief relatively blood-free. And after all, after the robbery, we don't want people seeing a bunch of blood-soaked butchers running through the streets. Even Tel Aruban, that's likely to warrant suspicion. If you can catch your victim lying down asleep or resting, you're in an excellent position. You place one hand over the mouth with your thumb under the chin. Then you use your other hand to slit the throat and quickly turn the head to one side so the body bleeds out away from you. There is a risk here of becoming bloodstained if you don't move the head quickly enough. If you're unsure, strangle the victim first to avoid the blood that tends to spurt out in 3-foot jets when someone is stabbed while alive. A very good friend of mine, a thief in Guinness, whose name I won't mention, swears by the strangle and slash technique. Simply put, you grab your victim's throat from behind, and while throttling him, you batter his face against the opposite wall. When the victim is thus rendered unconscious, you slash his throat while still holding him from behind, and the risk of staining one's clothes with blood is practically non-existent. The classic technique, which requires less grappling than my friend's variation, is to place one hand over the victim's mouth and then saw through their throat in 3 or 4 strokes, rather like playing a violin. It requires little effort, and while there's quite a bit of blood, it all jets forward away from you. There's no reason when one knows one is going to be slitting some throats not to take some precautions and bring some extra equipment. The best neck hackers I know generally carry a bit of wadded cloth on the aft side of their knives to keep blood from getting on their cuffs. It's impractical for this sort of assignment, but when you're only anticipating 1 or 2 victims, nothing beats throwing a sack over the target's head. drawing the string tight, then supplying the killing blow or blows. Imogen laughed loudly. Can I see a demonstration sometime? Very soon, said Lidos, if Galasai does her job. Galasai brought out the map of the guild house, freshly stolen, and they began to detail out the strategy. The last several hours had been a whirlwind to all. In less than a day, the three had met, formulated a plan, bought or stolen the necessary ingredients, and were about to execute it. Not one of the three was sure whether confidence or stupidity was driving the other two, but the fates were aligned. The guild house was going to be robbed. When the sun set, Lidos, Galasai, and Imogen approached the cobbler's guild house on the east end of town. Galasai used her caucus of stoneflower to mask their scent from the guard wolves as the three passed over the parapets. She also acted as lead scout, and Lidos was impressed. For someone of relative inexperience, she knew her way through shadows. Lidos' expertise was demonstrated a dozen times when guards were of such a diverse variety. He was able to demonstrate all means of silent assassination he had developed over the years. Imogen opened the vault in his unique and systematic method. As the tumblers fell beneath his fingers, he softly sang an old dirty tavern song about the 99 loves of Boethia. He said it helped him focus and organize different difficult combinations. Within seconds, the vault was open and the gold was in hand. They left the guild house an hour after they entered. No alarm had been raised, the gold was gone, and corpses lay pooling blood on the stone floor within. Well done, my friends, well done. You learned well, Lido said as he poured the gold pieces into specifically designed compartments in his tunic sleeves, where they held fast with no jingling or unusual bulges. We'll meet back at the plot and plaster tomorrow morning and split up the bounty. The group parted ways. The only person who knew the most covert route through the city's sewer system, Lido, slipped in through a duct and vanished below. Galasai threw on her shawl, muddied her face to resemble an old fleb fortune teller, and headed north. Imogen headed east into the park, trusting his unnatural senses to keep him away from the city watch. Now I teach them the greatest lesson of all, thought Lidos, as he sloshed through the labyrinthine tunnels of sludge. His guar was waiting there, where he left it at the city gates, making a laconic lunch of the chokeweed shrub to which it had been leashed. On the road to Vivek, he thought of Galasai and Imogen. Perhaps they had been caught and brought in for questioning already. It was a pity he couldn't see them undergoing interrogation. Who would break under pressure first? Imogen was certainly the tougher of the two, but Galasai doubtless had hidden reserves. It was merely intellectual curiosity. They thought his name was Lidos, and he was meeting them at the plot and plaster. The authorities wouldn't therefore be looking for a Dubner named Sathis, celebrating his wealth miles away in Vivek. As he prodded his mount forward and the sun began rising, Sathis pictured Galasai and Imogen not undergoing interrogation, but sleeping the good deep sleep of the wicked, dreaming how they would spend their share of the gold. Both would wake up early and rush to the plot and plaster. He could see them now. Imogen laughing and carrying on, Galasai bushing him to avoid bringing unique attention. Oh, hushing him. That looks like a bee, hushing him to avoid bringing unique attention. They would take a couple flagons of grief, perhaps order a meal, a big one, and wait. Hours would pass, and so would their moods. The chain of reactions that every betrayed person exhibits. Nervousness, doubt, bewilderment, anger. The sun was fully risen when Sathis reached the stables of his house on the outskirts of Vivek. He reined in his guar and filled its feed. The rest of the stalls were empty. It wouldn't be until the afternoon when his servants returned from the Feast of St. Reims in Guinness. They were good people, and he treated them well. But from past experience, he knew that servants talked. If they began to connect his absences with thefts in other towns, it was only a matter of time before they would go to the authorities or blackmail him. After all, they were human. It was best in the long run to give them a week off with pay whenever he was out of town on business. He slipped the gold into the vault in his study and went upstairs. The schedule had been tight, but Sathis had given himself a few hours to rest before his household returned. His own bed was wonderfully soft and warm compared to the dreadful mattress he had to use at their canton in Tel Reuben. Sathis woke up sometime later from a nightmare. For a second, after he still hear Imogen's voice nearby, singing the 99 Loves of Boethia. He lay still in his bed waiting, but there was no sound except the usual cracks and groans of his old house. Afternoon sunlight came through his bedroom windows in ribbons, catching dust. He closed his eyes. The song returned, and Sathis heard the vault door in his study swing open. The smell of stoneflower filled his nose, and he opened his eyes. Only a little of the afternoon sunlight could pierce the inside of the burlap sack. A strong feminine hand clapped over his mouth and thumb jabbed under his chin, just as his throat opened and his head was shoved to the side. He heard Gala say in her typical calm voice, "Thank you for the lessons, Sathis." Oh, that was a good one. So much for honor among thieves. But that's all the Thieves books that we have. I'm sitting in my library at Monolith. So I hope you enjoyed those books, and I will see you next time in the Books of Skyrim.